Satan is really attacking my mind right now. He knows that I was not expecting a $75 a month rent increase this month. You know, it's been really strange. When I worked at Walmart, my rent would increase at the most 5 or 10 or $20 a month. And I had some years where it didn't increase at all. I've been living in this apartment complex since 2004. And at that time I was living with my mother, and I couldn't stand living with her because she was crazy. She's a narcissist. And I just decided I felt like the Lord wanted me to move out, and I think he did. But it was an act of faith because I had car payments and I really couldn't afford to move out. But I was so desperate not to live with my mother that I moved out, even though my job at Walmart wasn't really paying me enough to make car payments and to live here in this apartment. And what ended up happening is after I was here for a couple of months, they towed my car because I wasn't making my car payments. And I ended up having to ask my mother for help. And because at that time, Vladimir Putin was in my life, and I was saying, Vladimir, oh, actually, Vladimir did help me. He paid off one of my credit cards. I wasn't so wise in my finances back then. I didn't, you know, the Lord's had to teach me how to manage my finances better. I can say that right now I am not in debt at all. I do not use credit cards. And the Lord has had to counsel me about how I manage my finances. He's instructed me to rip up all my cards. And the Gail commandments actually make it easy for me to know what to do. Like, one of them is thou shalt spend money only on food and bills. Right there. It doesn't say that I can spend money on moving. So I already know that God's will is for me to stay here. And so I'm thinking, but Jesus, you also have a Gail commandment, thou shalt save $100 a month. I don't see how I can do that, Jesus. At least I've been following the Gail commandments. So say this, I don't like to ask for financial help because it makes it appear like the real Brent Spiner's not in my life. So it kind of goes against my grain. But I would like you all who are listening to pray. And if God lays it on your heart to support me, I do have a Patreon page. Even $1 a month would help. I have been losing financial support. I don't get very much financial support, and the financial support I'm getting is from very few people. And even though I list my Patreon supporters at the end of the video, half of them are not paying into Patreon at the end of the month. But I keep them up there because they've paid in the past. In the past 6 months, I've lost about 80% of my Patreon support. What I think is happening is I think Lori is attacking my supporters. Let me tell you I'm not going to mention any names, but I'm going to tell you what's been happening to some of my supporters. Some of them have opened up to me. I really believe she's attacking them. Like at Twitter, she created a tweeter bird that killed about 13,000 of my Twitter followers. Lori has got she spends billions of dollars to keep Brent Spiner from me and to make sure that he can't help me financially. Her goal is to destroy me so that she can rule the world without any blockades. I am her biggest hindrance to world rule. You say, why does she want to rule the world? Because she's a greedy, sorry, wicked woman. You know, Lori McBride was created in a cloning lab in around 1992. See, what happened was Brent Spiner called me on the phone, made love to me on the phone, and the Jesuit order has been obsessed with me since my birth because of my King David genes. Anyways, what I'm going to say, if you pray to the Lord, and if you feel like the Lord's leading you to support me, I'm at patreon.com/GabrielChana. I'll have a link to my Patreon page at the bottom of this video. But I got to warn you, if you try to support me, you probably will get attacked. I hate to say it. well, she spends billions of dollars to try to take me down. One time, Zach Knight admitted this to me. He said, Gail, I got to confess something to you. When I was bad and I was serving Satan, there were several times that Brent tried to help you, and he like left $1 million worth of cash in your apartment. And we found out about it, and I went in there and I took the money out of the apartment, and then me and Rule 13 was throwing the money all around and making love to each other with the money that, you know, we took from Brent Spiner. Another thing that happened, that my men have tried, they've literally tried, but when you've got the most powerful organization in the world, the Jesuit order, that opposes the man that is my true love, Brent Spiner, and that, you know, and they have developed a whole military, a whole team of scientists. This woman has got political clout, military clout, economic clout, right? Lori McBride is behind all the censorship that's happening. She's probably the reason that Jeanine Pirro is no longer at Fox News. And this is what I'm up against, folks. If Brent Spiner tries to leave money in my apartment, then the Jesuits come in here and they take it out, or if they can. And another time when one thing that happened to me once is that my insurance wasn't paying for my doctor. And they were saying, well, you can't see your doctor anymore till you pay up. And I thought, well, my insurance is supposed to cover this. This is crazy. And so on the principle of the thing, I wasn't going to go. I said, I'm not going to go see this doctor if they're going to make me pay out of my own pocket. And finally, it got to the point. So I tried to look for another doctor, and it got to the point where I found out there was no other doctor in this town that would work with my insurance. So finally, Brent wrote me and he said, Gail, you know what? I know the solution to this. He said, first of all, he says, Gail, let me tell you what happened to me when I tried. I wrote Brent and said, Brent, you're a doctor. Why don't you just write a prescription for Seroquel and give it to me, and then I can use that to get Seroquel? So Brent said he did that. And he wrote a prescription as a doctor, and he worked through my insurance to arrange for me to get Seroquel in the mail. You know what happened? Lori McBride sabotaged the post office. She took the Seroquel that was coming to me in the mail, and then she made a lubricant out of it and slathered it all over her vagina and tormented Brent with it, saying, ah, see what happens when you try to contact and help Gail? I've made a lubricant out of this. Come on, Brent, let's make love. Brent said he was horrified. He said he had nightmares over that. So he's kind of petrified, because every time he makes a move towards me to try to help me financially or to make it obvious that he's really in my life, the Jesuits move heaven and earth to sabotage him. So this is what I'm up against. I've lost, let me tell you what's been happening to some of my supporters. I have one supporter. She lives in a foreign country. I'm not going to say what country she's from, but she was, she was giving me some support. I really appreciate her. She seems like the Jesuits got her neighbors. She said their neighbors were making a racket. They were loud, obnoxious. It got to the point, I think, where she couldn't sleep at night. She says, Gail, I'm going to have to move. And she said, these neighbors came into my life after I started supporting you financially. And she's one of my Patreon supporters. And she says, because I have to move, it's going to cost me money, and I'm not going to be able to support you very much anymore. I'm sorry to tell you this. And so I lost a lot of support from her. And I said, I understand. She was telling me the horrors she was going through at her apartment, because the neighbors were horrible. They were terrible, man. They were like the neighbors from hell. So, and another thing Lori McBride does is she bribes people. In fact, I'm wondering if she may have bribed my apartment complex. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know. But she will bribe people to get them to serve them. She knows that there are a lot of people in the world that are like her, that the Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. She loves her money. You know what this horrible woman has done to the real Brent Spiner? When she came into Brent Spiner's life, and by drug raping Brent Spiner, the next thing she did was she took over all his credit cards. And she practically bankrupted the guy. She would, and I read about this in the fanzines back in the 1990s, where they would talk about how they saw her practically living at the mall, shopping all day. And Brent tells me she goes out and buys sex objects. She spends tons of money. She gets a new car like every year. And she's living out there in high on the hill, out in Beverly Hills or Malibu or wherever Brent was living. She basically took over all his bank accounts. And she said, well, I am your sexual partner, so I'm entitled to all your money. And Brent would try to destroy his credit cards. Nothing worked. She took over everything. This is what he's been dealing with. And you might say, well, why didn't he go to the police? He did go to the police. Guess what? She took over she's a Jesuit. She took over the police. So this is what we're dealing with, folks. And the police would say, well, we're sorry. From what we understand, she's your sexual partner and you owe her some financial responsibility. And Brent would try to say, yes, but I never wanted her. She came into my life. You know that movie out there that Keanu Reeves is in, that horror movie? I forget what it's called. Well, that was based on truth. I can't. There's just, these women are crazy. They're like psychos. It's like that movie, God, she's attacking my brain. I can't even remember the name of these movies. You know, these Fatal Attraction. You know that movie Fatal Attraction? She's like that lady. The only difference is, though, is that this married man willingly went to this wacko woman, whereas Brent's never, ever wanted Lori McBride. And, you know, my life is so complicated that some of the men on my marriage list don't understand why I wouldn't be just jumping up and down to have them come knock on my door and come in and make love to me just because they're rich and famous. You got to understand my life is complicated. Brent Spiner, Lori McBride walked into the green room at Paramount Studios and she spiked his beer with brain control drugs and he started feeling nauseated. And so when she walked into the green room, he thought that I had come from Washington State and that I had come to visit him. So he thought, oh, Gail's here. I'm going to make love to her. So he made love to Lori in his mind, thinking it was me. When the brain control drugs wore off and Lori McBride was in the bed next to him, he goes, ah! Who's this woman in bed with me? He found out that he made love to her. He was horrified, but it wasn't over. He said, get out, what are you doing in my bed? And then for 3 weeks, she kept going into the studio. She kept contaminating the water fountain, the food. And then you're wondering why even if Brent Spiner came to my door, which obviously the Jesuits are not going to let this happen because they know he's really in my life and they don't want it to be legitimized. But even if he did, I'd say, let's get married first. I want to see your signature on a marriage document, and then we'll have sex. Because I need to make sure that I'm not making love to a clone, or that maybe I'm being deluded. I mean, we're dealing with an organization that's cuckoo. They're spending billions of dollars. Okay, to make a long story short, folks, I've decided that God wants me to stay here, even though my rent's increased. And the reason for that is, you know, even if I did decide to move, I already did some research. The places where I'd be moving to, they don't have good walking areas, so I couldn't obey the area to walk. One thing I like about this apartment, no pets. Dogs are a real issue for me. Lori's followers have been loose dogs have been on all the walking trails. So I walk near a busy highway where there are less loose dogs, but even then I'm dealing with a lot of wackos. She's trying to get me to stop doing the Gail commandments. I really believe that if I move, I'll be violating about 3 or 4 of the Gail commandments. I won't be able to walk. I may end up with a bad psychiatrist who will work with Lori McBride because I'll be in a new neighborhood. So if you can support me at Patreon, it'd be appreciated. And just pray for me. The devil's trying to mess me up.